What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for April 11th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the podcast. Coming at you a little bit later today. I am getting a colonoscopy, so I had to time out everything with the prep and all of that. So I'm off of work, so I'm coming at you just slightly later. But as always, let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, where does Fletcher Cox rank among the Eagles' all-time greats? 64% of you said he is top 10. I would probably agree with that. I think you could make the argument again for top 5. I think if you're going to top 5 list, it's Reggie, Brian Dawkins, Donovan. I think you have to put Kelsey there. And then you got Fletcher Cox, Randall Cunningham. You have a bunch of guys I think that could fit into that 5th spot. So if you want to put him 6 through 10, I'm okay with that. If you want to put him 5, I'm also okay with that. Bonus question of the day today. Just let me know what you're thinking. Like who would you rank above him in the top 5? But I think Reggie, Donovan, Brian Dawkins, Kelsey, I think are solid top 4. I know you can make the argument for some of the old school guys, but I think just for me, my list, Reggie, B-Dog, McNabb, Kelsey. And then I'm kind of torn. I have Cox and Randall tied for 5th. And part of it, I bet you Cox probably could get the nod over Randall. And I think the Randall is more of my childhood bias coming in, as I still have his starting lineup there over my shoulder. But as always, thank you for participating in the question of the day. 267-495-8531 get you in on the Back to the Future voice and text line. Bonus from yesterday, in honor of the opening of the Vet, I did ask what were some of your big memories from the history of the Vet. I had a couple people talk about the Lions wildcard game when the Eagles just blew them out after Lomas Brown guaranteed the victory. One person mentioned when they blew out the Vikings in 2001, shut down Randy Moss and Dante Culpepper. Couple on both sides of the 93 World Series as well as the 80 World Series. That 15-14 game in the 93 World Series, I still say that was the game. If they win that one, I think they win the World Series. And surprisingly enough, I thought this was funny. Quite a few people reached out and said the implosion of the Vet was their favorite memory. I don't think that's very nice, but still was funny. Anyway, again, thank you for participating. We'll have another question of the day later in the show. A couple housekeeping things. Yesterday, I mentioned that Mike Schmidt was drafted in 71 and was called up in 71. He was, in fact, not called up until 1972. I just want to make sure, again, I always want the facts to be right. And then he became the everyday starter in 73. If you're interested in the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony, the link is in the description. We had a meeting last night. People are already buying tickets. So if you bought tickets, thank you. If you want to buy tickets, fully expecting this one to sell out much quicker than past years because of the class. I mean, the top 3 off the bat, you got Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, and Jameer Nelson. So, and then it got Angelo Cataldi, Andy Talley, Paul West. So there's a huge class. So if you want to buy tickets, the earlier you buy them, the better off you would be, as well as the information for tickets is in the description, as well as the list of the inductees. Be sure to hit me up on social media at Jimbo_Mont, Twitter and TikTok, at Philly Jimbo on Instagram. Hit me up on Facebook as well. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tell your friends. Let's help grow this thing. Let's do it. All right, let's move. Phillies won another series. They won 4-3 yesterday against the Cardinals in just kind of like a ugly weather-wise game. Just a sloppy. It looked like it would have been a miserable game to be at. Aaron Nola was solid. 6 innings, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 Ks. The bullpen was pretty solid as well. It could have been bigger, though. They're still, I mean, they did better. I can't rip them for runners in scoring position. I think they were 4 for 10, which you'll take. But they still left 10 guys on base. At one point, they had the bases loaded, no outs, or 1 out, and did not get a run in after they had already scored 2. So hopefully they're starting to turn the corner. I mean, Could have been better, but hard to argue with a solid outing from Nola and a win, and a series win to take that. They're back at 500. This is going to be huge because the Pirates are off to a pretty good start. They got a weekend series, 4 games against the Pirates starting tonight. Looking forward to that, especially with all the people I work with and things like that. All right, the Sixers are officially in the 100-meter dash of the season. They're rounding third and headed for home. 2 games left. They're currently 1 game up on the Heat for the 7th seed, which would give them the home game for the play-in tournament. But they're still only 1 game back of Indiana for the 6th seed, which would set them up to play, I believe, the Knicks or the Magic, depending on, I guess, how things play out. Each team that they're chasing has 2 games left. The Heat have 2 against the Raptors, which really is going to put the pressure on for the Phillies to win. Indiana has Cleveland and Atlanta, so I mean, very much could lose those games. I mean, at least one of them. And the Sixers have the Magic tomorrow night, which is going to be kind of tough, and then the Nets, which should be easy. So it should be a fun weekend for the final push in the NBA. Trying to figure out where the Sixers get that playoff seed. Love to get the 6th seed, although if they get the 7 and beat Miami, they do welcome old pal Doc Rivers with a banged up Giannis. So I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Giannis does look like he's going to be okay. It was like a calf strain, but those things... And it's Doc on top of, I don't know. But let's get through. Tomorrow night's going to be a big night. We should have a much clearer picture when we wake up on Saturday morning on where the Sixers stand. New episode of the Clashing Conferences podcast dropped today. Be sure to check my boys out over there doing good things. They were on location in Chicago this week. So go check them out. Clashing Conferences podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Now, the Flyers have some work to do. They're in action tonight against the Rangers up in New York. Things are not as well as they could be. They need to win. I think before anything, we start worrying about what happened in the standings and what's going on. They need to win tonight. And I don't know if that's even possible. And I know there's been a lot of talk about, the Flyers, that we should be happy that they even got this far. We should be happy that they gave us, they overachieved. And all of that is all well and good. However, just like John Tortorella said, things change. Like your expectations change. Like they're here. So it's not necessarily... oh, well, let's just be happy that they made it. No, like you want to be like your expectations change. And like I can't subscribe to that mindset that, well, that like maybe a couple months from now after the season is over, we can talk about that. But no, like they are absolutely in the middle of a choke job. Like they've lost 7 in a row. They have a tough game against the Rangers, and they're still, with 2 games left, I think, or 3 games, how many they got left, they're only 2 points back of the wild card. So they're right there in it. Like it, with the team that they're chasing, they play the last game of the season. So I don't know. Like I'm not big on the moral victories and things like that. I think it's, I don't know. You want to see them like make it because we followed them all season too. Like, I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. That's your bonus question of the day. Should we be excited and happy with the Flyers season? I would say no. Like, you can't be with the way it's ending here. But that's not the official question today. That's the bonus, I guess. But we'll see what happens because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. But I feel as though if they lose tonight, they probably will be eliminated. Not maybe mathematically, but in kind of for all intents and purposes. So this is basically the season tonight against the Rangers. Okay, moving to the Eagles. We finally know who they're going to play to open the season in Brazil, and it is the Packers. And I don't know if it's true or not. I didn't really push into this too much, But the rumors I heard were that Brazil weren't going to allow Deshaun Watson to come into the country, and that's part of why the shift happened from Cleveland to Green Bay, which to me, and I'm going to tread very lightly with this because I'll explain in a minute, especially after I ripped them yesterday. They're kind of screwing the Eagles here. Like, it's not that it's a tough game to open the season. Like, it is what it is. You got to play who's on your schedule. That's not what I'm saying. But the fact that this is a home game that could have playoff implications for seeding down the road, kind of a shitty thing to put the Eagles versus the NFC team. Like, maybe pivot and put the Steelers there. I just don't like losing the home game to begin with, and then losing the home game, and then on top of it being against a team in the NFC that you're probably going to be, it's going to be in the top, like in the playoff picture. I think they kind of got screwed there royally, because the way the schedule is, every other year you get the extra home game, and we're losing out on an extra home game. And whether or not the players bitch about the crowd, like the link, especially for big games like this, would have been rocking. So I'm not necessarily going the 49ers route, because, again, we'll play. The schedule is what it is. I just think the NFL screwed us because they allowed Deshaun Jackson. And, like, again, I don't want to go down that road, but it is what it is with Deshaun Jackson. And if that is or Deshaun Watson, I should say, I apologize. Not Deshaun Jackson, Deshaun Watson. But if that truly is the reason why the Browns were not allowed to play, the NFL just screwed the Eagles royally with this. But that is today's question of the day. Let me know what you think. Did the NFL screw the Eagles by making them play the Packers instead of the Browns or even the Steelers down in Brazil to open the season? 267-495-8531 gets you in on the Back to the Future voice and text line. And before the 49ers fans or anybody else comes in and is like, well, you're whining. I'm not whining, because, again, you got to play who it is. And it is what it is. You got to overcome that adversity. I get it. But the rest of the schedule is not even out yet, so you don't even know what the rest of the thing. So I'm not bitching about it. I'm just saying, like, it's kind of a dick move by the NFL, especially if the reason for it is because Deshaun Watson, I got to stop saying that. I apologize. Deshaun Watson has a history of sexual abuse or sexual assault, whatever you want to do it. If that's why, that's a messed up reason to not let, like, to me, screw the Browns for having him as their quarterback and make them play with their backup quarterback to start the season. Don't screw the Eagles against an NFC team that's going to be in the playoff picture, that you're losing a home game. You're losing that home field advantage, because there's probably going to be just as many Packers fans there as there will be Eagles. All because Deshaun Watson likes to get a happy ending on his massages. Like, to me, there's an issue there. That goes beyond. All right, I don't want to get into it. But let me know, did the NFL screw the Eagles by making it the Packers instead of the Browns to open the seasons? 267-495-8531 get you in on the Back to the Future voice and text line. The irony of all of this is the Eagles and Packers both have green in their color schemes, and Corinthians Stadium, where they play, they have an informal ban on green, because the home team there, their biggest rival, so it'd be the equivalent of like the Cowboys, and not being able to wear Cowboys gear or anything navy blue or silver into the link. So that, I thought that was kind of funny. So I don't know, but I was not happy about that, only because if the rumblings I heard, and again, I only halfway looked at that and did not go in. And so this is purely speculation. But if it's because Deshaun Watson's his history of his whatever, and that's why they're not allowing the Browns to play the Eagles, that's a screwed up reason. And that the NFL just screwed the Eagles out of a home game. A home game against an NFC team that's going to be good. And I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but let me know what you think. Am I overreading this or what? But it's ridiculous. Positive news on the signed Davante front. ESPN was reporting that Howie and Davante's camp are working on an extension. Both sides expect it to get done. There was no timetable. I would imagine it would likely get done before the draft, which is in a couple weeks. But looking in the market of like $25 million plus. So good news on that. Thank you, finally. But I'm going to say it and talk about it every day until they sign that. So sign Davante, Howie, get it done, make it happen. And then we can all go to phillygoat.com and pick up. There's Davante shirts there if you want them. Still, if you believe in the Phillies, they got the Believe shirts. Still not too late to jump in. I mean, I know that the ending is not what we wanted, but you can still jump in on the Flyers bandwagon moving forward. Just go check them out. The shoes, all of it. phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right, so if you think I got fired up about the Eagles playing the Packers and the whole Deshaun Watson thing, you ain't seen nothing yet. Today, we're going to go back to 1907. Yes, we're hopping in the way, way, way back machine. And when people talk about Philly fans, all they talk about is booing Santa and throwing snowballs. They're the first two things. It's the laziest narrative that the national media can come up with. But 60 years before any of that happened at Franklin Field, and we've talked a lot about it, that Santa deserved to be booed. He said he would have booed himself, so let's leave it at that. But 60 years before that happened, the Phillies went up to the Polo Grounds in New York to open their season against the New York Giants. And before the game, there was a bizarre April heavy snowstorm. I don't think they called it a blizzard, just a heavy snowstorm. But there was enough snow that the workers had, when they were clearing the field, there were mounds of snow in foul territory. Do you see where I'm going with this? Phillies got up early 3-0, and Giants fans were just not happy with the pitiful performance of their Giants. Began throwing snowballs throughout the game, disrupted play. The play had to be stopped a couple times. And just like the old saying goes, it was all fun and games until somebody loses an eye. Nobody lost an eye, but you hit the home plate umpire, Bill Clem. That was the last straw. Clem got pissed off, said that's it. Calling the game, awarded the game to the Phillies. They won by forfeit, opening their season 1-0 with a forfeit victory over the Giants in the Polo Grounds due to the fans throwing snowballs onto the field at the players, hitting the umpires. Say what you want. Never in the history that I am aware of, never in the history of Philadelphia sports has a game been called and forfeited because the crowd was that unruly. So there you go, national media. How come you don't talk about that? 1907, 1968, it doesn't matter. It's ancient history at this point. But maybe we learned from our big brothers in New York. Did you ever think of that? Nobody talks about the Giants fans. Ironically enough, those Giants fans, that team moved out to San Francisco, and there's all kinds of craziness that happens out there at the stadiums on the West Coast. Nobody talks about that, though. It's all about throwing snowballs at Santa. And if you can tell, I haven't eaten since 11 o'clock yesterday. I'm a little cranky. So the NFL screwed us with the Packers, all because of Deshaun Watson's massages. The national media doesn't talk about throwing snowballs and having a game called, hitting the umpire in the head. Pissed him off enough that he called the game. No, nobody talks about that. It's all about Philly fans. It's ridiculous. But on this day, in 1907, Phillies opened the season with a forfeit victory over the Giants up in New York at the Polo Grounds when the fans threw snowballs at the players, at the field, hit the umpire, and Bill Clem was like, that's it, game over, Phillies win. And that happened in 1907. 60 years before we did it. Nobody talks about the Giants fans. Oh, I can't do that. It's ridiculous. All right, today's top 20 memory for the 20th anniversary of Citizens Bank Park. We're going to go back to the 2022 NLDS, one of the greatest series, I think, in Phillies postseason history. So Game 3 of the 2022 NLDS with the series tied at 1 game apiece. Aaron Nola took on our old pal Spencer Strider. And this is where we got a glimpse of what Aaron Nola was capable of. This is the game I believe I gave him the nickname Playoff Nola. He went 6 innings, gave up 5 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 6 Ks. Bryson Stott doubled in Brandon March for a 1-0 lead in the third off of Strider. Then they intentionally walked Kyle Schwarber so they could pitch to Rhys Hoskins. Bad move. Rhys was pissed. Hit the first pitch deep to left field. Threw the spiked his bat. One of the most iconic moments in Philadelphia sports history. And then it got better from there. JT came up, singled. Bryce came up, went deep to right center. Phillies went on to win 9-1. Spencer Strider went 2 2.3 innings, gave up 5 earned runs, and really, this is the moment, this game in particular, when the Phillies got inside the Braves' postseason heads. We've seen that for the past 2 years. We know they would go on to win the next day when JT hit the inside the park home run. But today's Citizens Bank Park top 20 memory for the 20th anniversary is Game 3 of the 22 NLDS when Rhys Hoskins took Spencer Strider deep when he got disrespected when they walked Kyle Schwarber to pitch to Hoskins, spiked his bat, and just kind of set the tone then for the rest of that postseason run. But just every time now, I don't think the Braves at this point have ever beaten the Phillies in the postseason, now that I think about it. So as the Cranberries said, they're in their heads. I won't make you suffer through my singing, but that is today's Citizens Bank Park top 20 memory for the 20th anniversary of Citizens Bank Park. Finally today, it's just, this is one of those disappointing ones. The Philly sports teams with unfinished business who left, in my opinion, a ton of meat on the bone is the 1996-97 Flyers. And this story starts off back in 1991 when the Quebec Nordiques drafted Eric Lindros number 1 overall. We all know how the story goes. Lindros ends up with the Flyers, becomes the leader of the team, becomes the captain. In 1994-95, they lost in the conference finals to the Devils, 4-2. They won the Atlantic Division that year and were the 2 seeds. So they had a legitimate shot, but you chalk it up to them being a young team. They came back the next year and lost in the Eastern Conference semis after getting the number 1 seed overall in the Eastern Conference. They lost to the Florida Panthers, who would go on to go to the Stanley Cup. So at least you can take some solace in that. But coming into that 96-97 season, expectations were through the roof. They started off slow because Lindros was hurt with a groin injury, and then they got hot at one point in January. They won 17 games straight without being beaten, which is still only halfway to the Flyers and North American sports teams record of 35. They ended up taking second place in the Atlantic, 103 points, 1 point behind the Devils. They finished with a record of 45, 24, and 13. They were the 3 seed, rolled through the Penguins, rolled through the Sabres, rolled through the Rangers, won each of those series 4-1, and were ready to take on the Red Wings. And the Flyers came in favored to win this, and it looked like their time had finally come. It was just, all right. Detroit was not a bad team. They had lost a couple years before in the finals to the Devils. And if I remember correctly, coming into this, both teams had losing streaks, Stanley Cup finals losing streaks, like losing the series. But the Flyers just failed to show up. Goaltending, I think, was the difference in this game. The combination of Ron Hextall and Garth Snow allowed 16 goals in the 4 games. Meanwhile, the offense only scored 6 goals. Like, that was just, man, like, that's the difference right there. They could not score, and they couldn't stop Detroit. I mean, goaltending, I think, and that sort of was Hextall was sort of going, like, near the end of his career there, and I think ultimately, as has been the case all of my life, just lack of goaltending. Ever since, like, Hextall had the series where he was standing on his head in '87, but other than that, the Flyers just have not had consistent goaltending. And that was the difference in this series. They got swept out, and this was sort of the beginning of the end of the Eric Lindros era for the Flyers. It was definitely the high point of his career with the Flyers, and then it all started to just fall apart and go downhill after that. But today's Philly sports team that left a lot of meat on the bone and has a ton of unfinished business. Really, you could take that whole era, the 94 to 97 Flyers, and just put them in there. Like they were one of the top teams in the East, and just they finally got over the hump and then got embarrassed by the Red Wings, and it wasn't even close. But they're today's team with unfinished business that left that meat on the bone. Today's top 20 memory of Citizens Bank Park was Game 3 of the 2022 NLDS. Phillies beat the Braves 9-1 when Rhys Hoskins felt disrespected and took Spencer Strider deep, spiked his bat, and just really set the tone now for this team in the postseason, even though he's not there. So one of my favorite memories, I remember sitting at McGurk's in Fort Washington, watching this game, just having a blast, tons of fun. On this day in 1907, the Phillies won their opening day game up in the Polo Grounds in New York when the umpire called the game, awarded the Phillies the forfeit 3-0 when he got hit in the head with a snowball from the unruly, undisciplined, and out of control New York fans. There, I said it. But nobody talks about that. It's all about the Phillies back in 1968, or the Eagles back in 1968. But never mind the Giants fans. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Eagles opening up against the Packers. I personally think they got screwed, especially if the reason is the Brazilian government would not allow Deshaun Watson in. It's absolutely ridiculous. 267-495-8531. Get you in to the Back to the Future voice and text line. Let me know your thoughts. I'm expecting it to blow up today. And if you're a Niners fans listening, let me have it, because I'm not whining. I'm just saying it's messed up. It's a terrible situation. We'll still beat the Packers. I ain't worried about that. Just let me know. I think the NFL screwed them on that. Flyers do or die tonight, basically, for the Flyers up in New York to take on the Rangers. It's not the first time they played the Rangers late in the season in a do or die match. We know how that worked out about 14 years ago. So hopefully we can have some of that same magic today, and they can turn it on and get hot and get a little bit of luck. Go have yourselves a Thursday. It's going to be rainy, but it's still going to be warm. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.